Hey guys, and welcome to another random adventure with me, Justin. And today I'm on a lunch break, which is usually how these happen. And right here on the corner of 1700 South and 500 East in Salt Lake City, there is a bit of history here. And if you're like me and was raised in Utah, sorry about the loud construction, garbage trucks, whatever. Let's wait for them to pass. Anyways, if you're like me and was raised in Utah, you are inundated your entire life about the history of the Mormon pioneers. And I have known quite a bit about them. I knew they came to Salt Lake Valley through Immigration Canyon, and they settled in Salt Lake City. That's how we got Salt Lake, right? That's basically the story. But there's a lot of little pieces that are filled in that I didn't know about. And I wanted to take a few minutes today, right here next to, it's a tax building, and check out what I didn't know about before. Let me show you. Again, there's no parking at this area. So we are just on the corner of 1700 South and 500 East. And I'm looking south right now. And you see right there, let's do this officially, safely, push the button. But you'll see right there, just a pile of rocks, which to the common man seems a little strange, but that's exactly where our destination is, this pile of rocks. You can see it's actually less than a block, and not much to it. Let me show you what it is. Well, as we get closer, you'll see these rocks actually have a few names. I don't know if you can see those or not. They're very hard to see. But again, rocks, bushes, very small little park. Hardly even called a park because, I mean, there's no play equipment, no grass really. But this is First Encampment Park. Now, as the pioneers came out of, through these trees here, there's some mountains, which is Immigration Canyon. Up in that area, they actually came down and arrived in the valley on July 22nd, 1847. These are the names of all of those pioneers who first made it to the valley. And I'm very intrigued actually, because upon further inspection, I notice here is Hans C. Hansen, which is interesting to me because I do have a relative who settled in Plain City, although I don't think he was an original pioneer who was the first ones into the valley. I'm gonna have to do some research on that because the name is the same, Hans Christian Hansen, but I am not sure if he was first in the valley. The reason that these names are significant and they have numbers next to them is the rocks here have their names carved into the rocks. It's an interpretive representation basically of the landscape of how it looked when the pioneers made it into the valley. And upon a little bit of research, I've discovered a couple of things. This dry riverbed represented a couple of the rivers, the Parley Canyon River, I believe, and Immigration Creek, where they both came together. And that's one reason they chose this location, which if you read, it's not the exact location right here. They knew it was around here, but they weren't exactly sure where. And again, the names are all carved on these rocks. So I'm trying to be as kind as possible without stepping on everything. But this is the one that intrigued me the most. Again, it may be a relative of mine. Super cool. But I always think of the Salt Lake Valley as being, you know, fertile, and it wasn't. It was a desert, and there was rocks like this, and super cool to think about that. As we come over here to some of the plaques, it does talk about some of those who came into the valley after the original crew, including Brigham Young actually. This is talking about how the park came to be. It was dedicated in July 22nd, 1997, which was 150 years after the arrival of the pioneers by Emerson Ballard. It basically just began by a couple members of the church who wanted to celebrate it. This talks about the first encampment and why they chose this spot. Here you can see this is the place, State Park. This is kind of Immigration Canyon, and they followed the creek as any good pioneers would have done, follow the water. And they wound up coming here and camping at this spot here. And then the next day they took off to City Creek. They went this direction and then up to where we know like the temple and everything is. And that's eventually where they decided to settle. When Brigham Young, he was a little bit late getting to the valley because he had an illness and he didn't arrive until July 24th. And he actually, when he came down, went straight to this camp. He wasn't part of the original encampment. So, you know, bit of history, although Brigham Young never came to this location that I'm aware of. Interesting to me also is that Parley's Creek still flows through the neighborhood in an underground conduit, so you can't see Parley's Creek, but Immigration and Parley's, they both met. That was a representation of those dry creek beds. And then what's also interesting to me is the first encampment is here, and Wilford Woodruff's farmhouse is just a couple blocks. It's actually still standing. And let's go see that. Now, again, park's right behind me there. I'm just heading north, just a couple blocks. If you know anything about Wilford Woodruff, you'll know that he was a president of the church eventually. But at the time this house was built, the area that the first encampment was actually pretty rich in growth. They had a farm in this area. It was very fertile thanks to the rivers and the creeks that were here. And so Wilford Woodruff actually built his home closer to those farms, and I was very surprised to learn that it was still standing and the condition of it. It's a beautiful home, and all you have to do is just walk half a block. Let me show you. So as I'm walking, there's this beautiful yard, which is very unusual because around here there's actually quite a bit of houses that are older. But this is Wilford Woodruff's home. It's gorgeous. Now somebody owns it. I'm not going to go inside. But if you look right here, it's an interesting fact. They called it the Woodruff Villa, and that's actually original to the home. That placard. I didn't know why. I just assumed, I don't know, they were proud. It's a gorgeous home, isn't it? I'm sure those of you who know, you hear the dog barking. I'm sure they just love me coming, but I just want to read this historical placard because it does talk a little bit about that plaque. The Woodruff Villa, built in 1891. You can pause it here if you want to read, but I'm not going to disturb these people too much. It basically just says that the plaque on top was because the pioneers came and were running away from polygamy and persecution, and when they built this house they weren't afraid anymore, and they wanted to proudly proclaim this as Wilford Woodruff's home, and they put the Woodruff Villa 1891 on there. I'm glad somebody's still taking care of it. Interesting fact to me. The yard is beautiful, it's big. I don't know whose home it is, but I'm grateful that it's still here. And then interesting enough, if you go to the south next door, perhaps this yard isn't taken quite as care of, but this home right here was Wilford Woodruff's son's house, who also helped in the farming, and there's kind of a representation, some old farm equipment. This house is a little different now. You can tell from the various mailboxes that it's an apartment complex. So the house still stands, but I think there are various families here. See, again, there's various mailboxes, and I don't want to disturb the people who live here either. But just to give you an idea, we'll stop and you can pause this as well if you'd like. Asahel, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Asahel Hart Woodruff was his son. Hopefully that's focusing for you. Anyways, this house was built in 1907, and again, it was his son. So interesting that the house still stands here. I wish I could go inside, but where it is other people's property now, I'm not going to do that. So again, just a quick little random piece of history that I think is forgotten. I always found Mormon history and the Church of Jesus Christ history, the persecution, the travel out west, the pioneers. It's always been fascinating to me. I wish I could have been a part of it or at least witnessed it. I don't know if I'd have the strength to commit myself to doing it, but I wish. Anyways, if you're ever interested to come down this way, check it out. I'm going to do a little bit of research, a little bit of history, and see if I'm related to Hans Hansen, one of the first in the area. Thanks for joining me on this adventure.